While the Sims franchise can be viewed as a series of cozy Barbie Dreamhouse Simulator games, there is so much lore and so many mysteries and unanswered questions that colour the franchise's history, especially when you look beyond The Sims 4. In my opinion, the lore is a huge part of why so many players have fallen in love with the series. The power that the mysteries which envelop The Sims games hold is also twofold in my eyes. First, they get players talking and theorising. Whether you used ye olde forums back in the day or tackle the hellscape which is Twitter nowadays, these mysteries still connect players. Particularly with The Sims as well, mysteries fuel creativity. They give us a starting point to imagine and play out our own stories and breathe unique life into the game. So today, to celebrate The Sims franchise's wealth of lore and mysteries, we are going to be diving deep into a good old-fashioned iceberg, and I hope that you appreciate my vague and quite frankly pitiful attempt at making my background look a little bit spooky. I don't know anything about making good film or video, so lighting every candle that I have is the best that I could do. This is an iceberg that I created myself, but I guess you could call it a little bit of a remix of the iconic one created by Lettuce DL18 back on Reddit. As you'll notice, some of the topics are shared between them, but I've jiggled about their positioning, condensed some aspects, and added in some of my own too. This iceberg and video could be exponentially huger, such as the depth of the lore in the Sims series, but unfortunately I don't have 4 million hours to make the video, so here we are. If you think I've missed anything, drop the topics in the comments down below and maybe I'll put together a part 2 eventually. I suppose the main thing that more significantly differentiates this iceberg from the more well-known one is the question of, yeah, but why though? These aspects aren't just statements of lore, but it is lore that has been peppered with the zest of mystique, one could say. Basically, prepare for this video to leave you with lots of unanswered questions. This is gonna be a long old video, so grab a cup of tea and stick me on in the background if you like, but also viewer discretion is advised, as some of the topics that we're gonna be covering in this video are a little bit darker, even if they are fictional in The Sims. You know, in Minecraft, you guys know what I mean. My question of the day is, what tidbits of Sims lore do you wish that more players knew about? Again, drop them in the comments down below and let's get started.
That's suspicious.
Okay, so first up, we are of course starting with layer 1, and if you've only ever played The Sims 4, then you might not realize that that game is actually set in an alternate timeline compared to the previous games in The Sims franchise. So the actual timeline is as follows, and I'm gonna use the Goth household to kind of track the progression of the timeline in each game. So first we start in The Sims 3, which is the first game. Chronologically, in Sunset Valley, you'll be able to find Mortimer Goth and Bella Bachelor as children, obviously before they've got married. Then we move into The Sims 1, where Bella and Mortimer have got married and they've had their first child, Cassandra. And next we move on to The Sims 2. As you can see, the Goth family now has 2 children, Cassandra and Mortimer, and Bella is missing, but we're going to be talking a lot more about that soon. So coming back to The Sims 4 then, as you can see, just so many changes have been made between the lore and kind of positioning of so many families that we've already met throughout the franchise. And I guess my question always just has been, again, yeah, but why though? Why was this necessary? We'll get a lot deeper into the background of The Sims 4's development later on down the iceberg, but my question really is, there was so much gorgeous, delicious, luscious lore. Why did it all kind of have to be done away with in the 4th iteration of the game? Some of the more obvious differences are the fact that Dina and Nina Caliente are present in The Sims 4, but now Katrina is their mum, whereas back in The Sims 2 their mother's name was Nygat Caliente, so a little bit of a weird change there. And EA still seems to be really doubling down on changing up the lore, even as recently with the Life and Death pack, where Nervous Subject, Olive Specter's son, now has a name. Apparently he's been called Nyon this whole time. Moving on though, now we're going to talk about Bella Goth's demise, and Bella is one of the Sims franchise's most iconic characters, hands down, no questions asked. One of the major reasons why The Sims 2 is beloved by so many players is the fact that this is where a lot of the franchise's most iconic lore was born, and as I mentioned earlier, this is of course where we find out that Bella Goth has mysteriously disappeared. Because her story is so well known, I don't want to harp on it for too long, but I will give a super quick overview. So when you boot up a new game in Pleasant View, you'll get a little kind of title card which introduces each of the world's kind of main families, and it will tell you that Bella has disappeared. Bella's apparent last known location was the rooftop of Don Lothario, the town's local heartthrob slash eternal bachelor slash womanizer, and they were both seen admiring the night sky through a telescope together. From Don's memories, we actually can see that he tried to put some moves on Bella, but he rejected him, and let's actually remember that Don is engaged to Bella's daughter Cassandra, so that makes it extra weird and gross. But anyway, it's on that night that it is suggested that Bella was abducted by aliens. That's it, she's just entirely gone from the Goth household here. However, there is a Bella that can be found in Strangetown. She does look a little bit different to Pleasant View Bella, but it's unclear whether this was a purposeful action taken by the devs or an oversight. Regardless of whether this is the real Bella or not, she has no memories of being abducted regardless, so it's all very spooky and strange. However, the biggest question mark which surrounds the whole Bella Goth disappearance mystery for me is how she ended up dead on Lunar Lakes, which is a Sims 3 store world. So even though we did just run through the entire kind of chronology of the Sims franchise a minute ago, Lunar Lakes is a little bit of an anomaly because it's actually set in the future. If you don't know, Lunar Lakes is this kind of like sci-fi-y, alien-y space world, I guess you could call it. And yes, actually, before you ask, it has been confirmed that this is actually Bella Goth, the official Bella Goth. This is where she died. And so here we find that Bella has died of old age. That's the symbol that we see on her tombstone. And so does this mean that she was stuck up here on Lunar Lakes ever since her disappearance? Was she forced to live apart from her family, or had she actually been able to live a more fulfilling and kind of purposeful life up here? You know, did she actually end up choosing to live out her life here? Was she ever given the choice to go back home? As you can see, she does look entirely different from her classic dark-haired, red-dressed, you know, fashionista that she is and that we know her to be. So again, what happened to her up here? There are so many potential ways that the ending of Bella Goth's official story could be taken, and I guess one way could make it feel kind of sad, another way you could look at it a lot more positively, again if it was more her choice to live up here, but we will just never know, which is why this is such an iconic mystery in the Sims franchise. So another branch of the Sims 2 Pleasant View's drama, in addition to Bella's disappearance, all surrounds Don Lothario and his romantic escapades with half the town, as I mentioned earlier. Again, he tried on with Bella but got rejected. He was simultaneously seeing Kaylin Langarek, Dina Caliente and her sister Nina, as well as his fiancée Cassandra Goth. Now, Dina and Nina might look like basic girlies, but they have some very interesting ancestry. They are actually part alien. Their grandfather, Nesta, got pregnant via alien abduction, and through this, he gave birth to the sister's father, Flamenco. This, in addition to the fact that Dina was cracking on with Mortimer Goth, has led some players to speculate that they might have had something to do with Bella's disappearance. But the thing that I find most interesting in all of this is the fact that Don, Nina, and Dina can all be found scattered across The Sims 3. Most interestingly, they can be found in The Sims 3 as their adult selves, which suggests that some kind of time-traveling shenaniganery is afoot here. Don can be found in Riverview, and his bio states, excuse me as I'm going to be reading this here, that he woke up one morning in a whole new world. He remembers stepping onto a teleporter, several women laughing, and then nothing else until he found himself here. So was it Dina and Nina that sent him there? Similarly, the Calientes can be found in Barnacle Bay, which is another Sims 3 store world. Why did they decide to split from Pleasant View was the question here. Had Don done them so dirty that they were simply sick of him and needed to be rid of him? Or had they been protecting themselves and potentially even Don when the heat from Bella's disappearance got too much? Okay, now this one is a little bit of a cope, but why are there still so many bugs in The Sims 4? I would really love to play the For Rent pack, but I'm seriously still too scared to add any residential rentals to my Forever World, which is the save file that I will be for playing with forevermore for as long as I can. Because I don't want any devilish corruption glitches getting in there and destroying it. So yeah, that truly still will be a mystery, I guess. Back to the lore though, let's talk about Olive Specter, who we all know to be an absolute menace in my Sims 4 Forever World. Again, I always find her running around naked. She is determined to be the main character in that save file, honestly, I swear. Her whole shtick in Strange Town is that she has a slightly alarming number of gravestones in front of her house, so all very strange. Many of these graves belong to her ex-partners and husbands, including Early Demise and his brother Timely Demise, or Tim Lee Demise, I guess you should probably say it as, both of which died of electrocution, as well as Rigor Mortis and Euthanasia, who both died in fires. Honestly, whoever was at EA coming up with these names needs a raise, because snaps for the creativity there, honestly. Until recently, I'd actually forgotten that there are a bunch more kind of seemingly random Sims also buried in Olive's graveyard, including a pizza delivery girl called Danielle Graves, who potentially ironically died of starvation. There's also a repairman, an exterminator, and even a few teenage Sims, which is potentially the most alarming out of all of this. Considering how there's a room in Olive's house that looks suspiciously like a torture chamber, as well as a rather grand chair staring out over all of the graves, no one can deny that Olive seems to relish in being surrounded by death. Now, while it's not been 1000% confirmed that Olive caused all of these deaths, we know that she has a colourful past with the Grim Reaper. Her son, Nervous Subject, is actually Death's child, so many speculate that Olive could actually have been causing these deaths as a means of summoning her spectral lover to her, I guess. I guess the thing that I wish I knew more about is who were these, again, seemingly random Sims that are buried in Olive's graveyard? Had they done her dirty in some way, or were they just unfortunate random killings that she used as a means to an end to, again, be reunited with her lover? And I guess the even more concerning question is, did Olive actually enjoy committing all of these acts?
That's suspicious.
Heading into Layer 2 then, in The Sims 1 and Sims 4, your Sims can randomly get prank calls. I believe in The Sims 4 they were randomly introduced with the Eco Lifestyle Pack for some reason, but in both games some of these can be actually quite strange and unsettling, honestly. In The Sims 1 they could come between the hours of midnight and 8 AM, and a few of the more anxiety-inducing ones included: "The drop-off has been made, you have been warned. The end is near, make preparations." And perhaps my favourite, "You have been chosen, they will come soon." While these calls are harmless, why are they so sinister, and who is making them, honestly? If you joined The Sims series within the last 5 years, you might not know about this one. It's a bit silly, but it's still a mystery to me. Who the hell decided that a sufficient way to celebrate 20 years of The Sims franchise was to just give us a kind of ugly hot tub in The Sims 4. Now, at the time, this was a benefit to players who didn't own the stuff pack, which actually introduced hot tubs into the game in the first place, but still the item is fairly garish, one could say, and many in the community were quite vocal and disappointed about the fact that this was the way that they chose to celebrate such a milestone in the series, but at least they kind of clawed back some respect with the 25th anniversary earlier this year. Before I discovered Monte Vista, I was the biggest ride or die slag for Moonlight Falls, which is the world in The Sims 3 that was introduced with the Supernatural expansion pack. I just always loved the small town, kind of cozy in the middle of nowhere, almost like eternal autumn, evergreen kind of feeling that that world gave. My main question is, who at EA or Maxis was in their true hoa 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 feelings when designing this world, because there are so many Twilight references scattered throughout Moonlight Falls. The biggest being the fact that there is a household filled with a sim called Bailey Swain and her father Chester Swain. Bailey seems to have a very purple and green themed bedroom, which is mysteriously similar to Bella Swan's. I almost called it Bella Goth, Bella Swan's bedroom in Twilight. There is also a Le Chauve beach in this world, and there's a big feud between the Van Gold family, who are vampires, and the Wolf family, who shockingly are werewolves. This one isn't much of a mystery, but I truly just love it, and I love talking about it whenever I have the chance to, so... Again, stepping outside of the specific game lore, I want to talk about a mystery which I am actually very passionate about, very deeply passionate about, in fact, and that is, where have the Sims 4 game packs gone, okay? The last one that we had was in the summer of 2022 with the Werewolves pack, and since then, crickets. It's only been, you know, packs or kits, there we go, it's only been kits or expansion packs, or now stuff packs have been revived, and we've had a few sprinkled in, because similar to game packs, stuff packs had also gone missing for a long time. Game packs really are one of my favourite forms of DLC for The Sims 4, I just feel like they're always stuffed to the brim with content, and they just feel the most worth the money for me, I suppose. I get the most value out of them, so this one really vexes me, and I hope that game packs eventually get the stuff pack treatment and that they return to us, because where are they, EA? Where are you hiding them? Back to my beloved Sims 3 though, let's talk about Murder in Pleasant View. This is a book in The Sims 3 that you'll likely have come across. It's quite a common one that you'll see Sims reading or find in libraries, etc. And the suspicious thing here is that it's written by Alexander Goth, which is hella weird because he has not been born yet. So how could this book exist? Many players lean towards the idea that, again, some time-traveling shenanigans are afoot. I just wish we knew more about the content of the book though, because could Alexander have got the theory around his mother's quote-unquote death or disappearance wrong? Just because, again, we find Bella dead on Lunar Lakes, having died from old age, so it's mysterious that he suggests that murder occurred in Pleasant View all that time ago.
That's suspicious.
Heading into layer 3 and sticking with the Bella Goth mystery, there is another confusing string to this bow here. And it comes in how, on Lunar Lakes, again the place where we find Bella Goth dead, we find a sim called Matilda Goth, who looks suspiciously like Bella and obviously shares her last name. Matilda is a posty NPC, and she has no traits or skills because of that. All of this is to say, without being able to look beyond aesthetics, it's quite difficult to ascertain whether Matilda was actually potentially Bella Goth's third child or even some distant descendant, because again, we don't know how long Bella has been dead when you boot up a fresh save in Lunar Lakes. Or that is to assume that they're related at all, because they might not be. Again, going off what we were saying earlier, I really like to hope that Bella was able to lead a really just nice life up in Lunar Lakes and potentially even start a family, which is how Matilda is linked into all of this. But I don't know, let me know your theories down below, because that one gets me as well. But okay guys, it's time, right, strap in, buckle up, get ready for this one, because now we're talking about Lolita Goth, which if you've seen my channel at all, if you've seen any of the content that I've made around The Sims 3 recently, you will know that I am a ride or die for Lolita Goth. I have started a series where I've been trying to give her the life that she deserves, because There is so much mystery and so many unanswered questions around how we initially find her in The Sims 3, and I just can't get out of my head, so let's break it all down. So we actually find Lolita dead in the Goth family graveyard in Sunset Valley. On looking at her tombstone, we'll see that she's died from electrocution, which is very mysterious because the Goth family manor has barely any electric items at all, you know, past lights and an oven, I think, maybe. So the first question is, did Lolita actually die in the house, or was she brought to the family graveyard after her death? Another thing to note here is that we don't actually know whether or not she is officially related to the main Goth family, because even when you revive her, she does not have any kind of family connections in her genealogy panel. So that right there is another question, but we might be able to find some answers once again in Moonlight Falls, because Lolita actually shares the exact same favorites as Samuel and Olivia Goth, who we do know are connected to the main Goth family, but again, they just live in Moonlight Falls. This electrocution then apparently caused a fire which killed Samuel and Olivia's niece Frida Goth, who was also living in the house. Now once again, you're gonna have to excuse me as I'm looking down at my notes to make sure that I get these connections right here. But once again, these Sims are very much so connected to the Sunset Valley Goths, because we know that Samuel is the uncle of Frida and Gunther Goth, and Gunther is of course Mortimer's father, which makes Frida Mortimer's aunt. There we go. Okay, I think I've got all that right. I promise that this is all going to swing back around to Lolita, so do just hear me out, okay? So Frida apparently had a falling out with her brother Gunther after the family suggested that she marry into the Landgrab family, and there is of course this big kind of feud that is brewing between the Landgrabs and the Goth families. Frida apparently had no interest in making that kind of connection though, so she moved out to Moonlight Falls with Samuel and Olivia. I will say that this is entirely speculation on my own part, and this has not been confirmed in any way, shape or form. And I'm also not sure if other Simmers have made this connection in the past, but indulge me for a second and let's think about Lolita's traits. So Lolita seems to be very different from the other Goths in that many of the family members tend to possess the grumpy trait, whereas Lolita seems to be quite different from that. She's got the bookworm and hopeless romantic traits instead. So it seems to me that Lolita has always been a girl that's kind of had her head in the clouds. So I would kind of like to put forth the idea that Lolita may have offered to take Frida's place in terms of making this, marital bridge between the Goth and the Landgrab families. Something tells me that she might have found this quite a, romantic gesture, I guess. I'm not really sure. How she necessarily again ties into the main Goth household or the Goths that we find in Moonlight Falls, again, I'm still not too sure around. But I have to wonder if she might have potentially moved to Sunset Valley, preparing for, her upcoming nuptials, and then some kind of horrific accident might have happened where she passed before the wedding happened, maybe. I would love to hear your theories on this. That is just one that's kind of been brewing in my mind for a long time. As you can see, I'm very passionate about Lolita Goth. I love this sim so much, and I've had a lot of fun giving her the life that she deserves. So again, I'll have that series linked below if you want to check it out. If you downloaded the Sims 3 World Adventures expansion via Origin or the EA app before patch 69 released, then you might have access to the world of Adventureland. On booting up the world, it seems to be a carbon copy of Sunset Valley, except there is one very major difference. None of the Sims that we have come to know and love live in the world. In fact, they have been replaced by just two Sims. We've got Jack Ronson and Sally Hardy living here. So because the world is basically empty, it has such a strange, eerie vibe to it. But as you might have noticed, Sally and Jack are both dressed as explorers, so it's perhaps not as surprising to learn that the public release of Adventureland was actually a mistake on the part of the devs, as the world was just used in testing, traveling to the worlds that were added with the World Adventures pack. Before we knew the true backstory though, this world actually caused quite the stir in the Sims community at the time, and it was approached with a lot of suspicion, especially considering how some players had access to it and others didn't. As many players noted around the time, the general lack of life and weird vibe to Adventureland really did make it seem like it should have been the start of some creepypasta. I do really love how the Sims team properly lean into this mystery though, and I've just never really removed it from the game. I think that it's very Sims 3 coded, that kind of slightly chaotic behavior. Project Olympus was the code name given to the prototype which would eventually become The Sims 4. Its development apparently started in 2008 according to the Sims wiki, and its creation would have been a huge shake-up to the mainline series because the game was actually based around an online-only kind of multiplayer game experience, which is obviously a huge departure from the single-player experience which we are so used to. However, likely due to the poor reception of SimCity, which released in 2013 that was entirely based around an online-only model, a lot of work which went into Project Olympus was actually then repurposed into what would become The Sims 4, and where they decided to obviously eventually return to the formula that we know and love. You can see that this is very clearly the fact in some of the leaked screenshots of Project Olympus footage, where you can see that the map screen and even some of the assets in-game are literally almost direct replicas of what we actually got in The Sims 4, and especially also the Get Together pack randomly. I feel like there are so many mysteries surrounding the early development of The Sims 4, and I just wish that I was a fly on the wall for many of those meetings that was going on behind closed doors.
That's suspicious.
Moving into level 4, let's welcome in the Doe family from Sims 3's World of Midnight Hollow. As their bio notes, John and Jane Doe, with their children Joseph, James, and Jennifer, seem to be the perfect squeaky clean family. To me, this squeaky cleanness really sticks out as a little bit of a sore thumb against the quirkiness and eccentricity which marks the rest of the world. So obviously there's more that meets the eye just here. As we can see, John and Jane Doe are names given to unidentified, persons or bodies, which is quite strange and mysterious. Is that their actual names? Have they just so happened to choose those, pseudonyms, subtly or not so subtly? Incredibly rarely for pre-made Sims in The Sims 3, all Sims in the household, bar the oldest son, Joseph, only have relationships with other Sims in the household, so they don't know anyone other than their family members, seemingly. Now, this could again have been developer oversight, but I think that again, there's more that meets the eye here and that might have been intentional. So other than his family, Joseph has one romantic relationship with a Sim called Maggie Flynn, which leads me to think that he might have been trying to build some kind of, connection to the outside world that goes beyond just the family home. So there was actually a Sims 3 community blog post back in the day which, quote unquote interviewed the family, which, while it doesn't give us too much information, it does give us a little bit of insight into the family. And when asked what brought them to Midnight Hollow, the family seemed very evasive to this question and almost a little bit uncomfortable by it. Towards the end of the interview, Joseph gets up quite angrily and storms out the room, slamming the door behind him. At the end of the post, the interviewer asks for a tour around the family home, at which point they are asked politely to leave. Returning to the family bio, this kind of strangeness around the house itself is echoed here, as it actually questions whether or not the house used to have a basement, implying that it's been filled in or removed in some way. As I don't own the World of Midnight Hollow myself, I did do some digging on the forums to see what other players have found. Apparently, as the bio suggests, the house does in fact have no basement, but this simmer notes that there is an odd corridor which seemingly just leads to nothing. Perhaps at one time this did lead to a basement, but why remove it? What is, potentially down there, I have to wonder. Back to The Sims 2 though, I want to talk about one of the franchise's weirdest and potentially most unsettling NPCs, and that is the social bunny. So in The Sims 2, the social bunny NPC would appear when a Sim's needs get too low, and the social bunny would help, you know, raise them up, and would disappear when they kind of are filled sufficiently. This NPC functions similarly to The Sims 3's imaginary friends, where they would only appear to the Sim that needs them. So not every Sim in the household can actually see the social bunny. The NPC can appear in a few different color variations, and as you can see, it only has one eye, which is just a little bit weird. It's very much so evoking. This was my great-grandma's teddy bear that I found in the dusty, gross old attic, and it's kind of weird and it smells funny, and I don't know why it's still here kind of vibes. Because of this, some players have compared the social bunny to the film Donnie Darko, which I watched ages ago, and honestly, the connection could potentially be there, but considering how The Sims is, you know, rated teen, I don't know how strong that connection is, so I'll leave you guys to potentially investigate that yourselves if you'd like to find out more. I guess another mystery for me is just like, where does the social bunny appear from? Is it actually a person, or is it just some sort of figment of their imagination? I don't know, so many questions here. Next, we're moving on to another iconic Sims NPC, and that is Sunny the Tragic Clown. So Sunny the Tragic Clown was originally introduced in The Sims Living Large expansion. The NPC would appear and attempt to cheer up a Sim if their needs are too low, or if they've reached what the game described as a state of depression, which really kind of shows the game's age, I guess. But while in this state, Sims might refuse to carry out skill-building activities, or they might not autonomously go to work. However, as Sunny's name suggests, he can actually fail to raise the Sim's needs and will actually become a bit of a nuisance, honestly, as they are fairly difficult to remove once they have spawned. They kind of just wander around your lot crying. If you try to trap him in some fences or walls, he will literally just disappear into a spot in the ground and then pop back up somewhere else, which is a potentially strange and even supernatural trait that we'll circle back to in a minute. But you can also prevent him from spawning by either selling the painting, or if he's currently on your lot, setting fire to him, which is quite morbid. So that's Sunny from The Sims 1, but we also find him in The Sims 3. Dead. And again, The Sims 3 is set chronologically before the first Sims game, so that's suspicious. In The Sims 3, he looks rather more human-like. We can see his facial features much better, and strangely, despite the fact that he had the hydrophobic trait, he died from drowning. The tragic clown's grave can be found in the Sunset Valley graveyard. And so the fact that he's already dead in The Sims 3 has led some players to speculate that the clown that we find in The Sims 1 is actually some sort of ghost, or, you know, some sort of supernatural being rather than just a weird dude that shows up from your house, you know? Again, especially considering how he can seemingly teleport and that he just materializes from a painting from some kind of other spectral realm, I guess. But Sunny's position in the Sunset Valley graveyard actually opens up even more questions, because buried next to him is Opal Sewelly, who is a child who also passed away from drowning. We have very little information about Opal, but I guess with her proximity to the tragic clown, we have to wonder if their deaths may have been interlinked in some way. You know, was there some kind of tragic accident that the clown caused? Maybe even maliciously, or could they even have been friends? Opal does have the daredevil trait, so could she have perhaps jumped into some water and Sunny may have been the only one around to try to help her, which ultimately led to their mutual demise. Again, unfortunately, this is just another one that we're gonna have to speculate on, but it's a lot of interesting questions here. I was about to say that this last mystery in layer 4 of the iceberg would be a little bit lighter, but you know what, it's kind of not now that I think about it. So arguably the most prominent fairy family in Moonlight Falls are the Goodfellows. However, as their family bio reads, they do have a particular penchant for mischievousness, I suppose you could say. If you've ever played with this family in game, you might have wondered why Pip and Dahlia's child Fawn is a human, considering how both of her parents are fairies. Well, it turns out that the family apparently engineered an adoption agency mix-up prank? Like, it's just a prank, bro? What do you mean, a prank? So while they would take Fawn, another Moonlight Falls resident, Linda Rogers, would adopt a fairy toddler called Sophie. On reading the sim bio for the family's matriarch, Flora Goodfellow, it seems that she was the driving force behind the switch, being on a quest to, quote, understand human emotions. Apparently this adoption switch was just another one of her, again, pranks, which I hate using that word in this context. Here's hoping, though, that Flora doesn't let this fascination get out of hand as Fawn grows up.
That's suspicious.
Moving on to level 5. In the downtown sub-neighborhood from The Sims 2 nightlife, players may come across the House of Fallen Trees. And house is a modest way to describe it because it's way more of a mansion, to be honest. It costs around about 85,000 simoleons, and for good measure, you'll get the 3 graves on the lot included in the price. And obviously because of this, there are some supernatural happenings here. So upon looking in the backyard of this house, your sim will find 3 graves, and I'm gonna directly read out these names because I know that I'm gonna butcher them, so bear with me. So the graves belong to Frickerith, and Gvanduin Traku, and Raynel Ninjia. Once again, I'm very sorry for how I pronounce those names. Let's start with the latter of these sims though. So we can assume that Raynel was an occupant of the House of Fallen Trees, who, as indicated by the pink colour of her ghost, died from fright. That's right, we've got to the part on the iceberg where the dead are killing the living. Because for those who don't know, in The Sims 1 and 2, Sims can die of fright when seeing ghosts, for example. So many players have assumed that Raynel died from seeing the ghosts of the Traco family members that already lived here. Again, we're going off some assumptions here, but as they're buried here, it's assumed that Frickerith and Gavuduin, I think I might have called them Gavanduin last time. I don't know where I got that from, again, I'm sorry. They were cousins and both teenagers at the time of their death, and we're assuming that they previously lived at the House of Fallen Trees, with the other 6 members of the Traku family, who are, surprise surprise, also dead at the start of the game. And the other 2 Traku family members who are buried on this lot both died in fires. But now let's look at the rest of the family who are actually buried in the cemetery. So John Smith and Jenica Traku were at the head of the family. Together they had 2 children, Janail and Nihilist. Janail then married Kavonin, and they had Frickerith. Nihilist married Kienan, and they had Gavuduin. It seemed like John Smith died first, as some family members have the memory of receiving inheritance. Although according to the colour of his ghost and his behaviour, John Smith seemingly died of starvation. And apparently Sims can only receive inheritance from Sims that died of old age, I think. But according to the Sims wiki, when gravestones are moved to public lots, this can result in a switch in death type happening, so I'm not really sure what happened here, honestly. All of this basically leads to so many other questions surrounding why is it that the final family members' resting places have been, separated and split here? Why is it that Frickerith and Gavuduin is, left to rest on the family home lot, whereas the others are in the cemetery? Just so many questions around what really happened to these family members here. So now we're shifting from one haunted estate to another, but this one in The Sims 3's Riverview, as we are going to be talking about the Remington family. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but Riverview is actually free to download from the Sims 3 store. Definitely pick it up, it's a great world. But at one Remington point, we find Hannah and Aidan Jones, who are inhabiting the house, which is filled with its previous occupants, the Remingtons. Not a great deal is known about these Sims, but let's go through each one in turn. So Jasper, married to Eileen Remington, died of electrocution in the family home. Eileen died of starvation, and in some sick and twisted turn of events, she is buried right outside the kitchen window. alongside her daughter Kirsten and son Cody. Kirsty is the couple's youngest child who died from drowning, and Cody passed away from being in a fire. Again, not a whole lot is known about this family, but there is a lot of speculation from players that they might be a riff on the Winchester family, as Remingtons are also the name of a firearms company. But also, as with the Winchester Mystery House, the Remington mansion also looks like it's been very haphazardly built up over time. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the story of the Winchesters and the Winchester Mystery House, which can be found in San Jose, California, I will give you a really cut down version just here. So Sarah married into the Winchester family, which owned the extremely profitable Winchester Rifle Company. Sarah then gave birth to her daughter, who unfortunately passed away when she was only a few weeks old. Her husband then died shortly after, and so Sarah inherited the family fortune. She then moved across the country to California to buy the farmhouse that would eventually become the Winchester Mystery House. After consulting with a psychic, because she missed her deceased family, Sarah was told that she was cursed as a result of the lives that have been taken by the rifles which the family company produced. And so she was apparently told that if she ever stopped building onto her house, she would be killed. So this really explains the crazy nature of the Winchester Mystery House. You have stairs that lead to the ceiling, you have doors which open out on the first floor to nothing, and honestly the house generally just is crazy. I actually visited it a good few years ago at this point, and I'd love to go back because I feel like there are so many details and stuff to really take in, but it's actually really cool to see this story potentially being mirrored in The Sims 3. So evidently The Sims 3's world of Riverview really is filled with some crazy lore, and I actually came across this next bit while playing in the world not that long ago. So residing at 45 Lost Willow Road, you'll find a sim named Billy Caspian, and he lives alone in this beautiful, big, airy, light barnyard conversion. And again, this place gets great natural light, which suits Billy well because he is an artist. He was extremely excited when the famous artist Hank Ferdinand offered to mentor him in his creative journey, but on getting into game, you'll notice that Hank Ferdinand is actually buried in the Riverview cemetery. It seems as though Billy's excitement at the prospect of being mentored by Hank only ran so deep, and that this might have masked some deep resentment that Billy fostered towards Hank, and we can find that out from Billy's sim bio, as I'm gonna read. Billy Caspian may never be the artist his mentor Hank was. He was always frustrated at how easy things came to him. It's not fair that things should come easy to one person when others have to work so hard for it. Considering how Hank passed away from starvation, one has to question if Billy might have had something to do with Hank's demise.
That's suspicious.
Okay, right, things are gonna start getting really dicey here because we are moving into the penultimate layer of The Sims lore and mysteries, Iceberg. And so it's now that we're finally getting to meet the acquaintance of the Beaker family, who can be found in Strangetown in The Sims 2. At 1 Tesla Court, you'll find Cersei and Loki Beaker and Nervous Subject, who we did briefly mention earlier. We really know that Olive did not care much for her son Nervous, because when we catch up with her in The Sims 2, she does have a memory of her child being taken away by the social worker. And unfortunately, the neglect of Nervous does not end here, because upon booting up Strangetown in The Sims 2, we can find him living as an adult with these local mad scientists. And Nervous is literally Cersei and Loki's test subject. What the nature or intended outcome of these supposed experiments were, we really don't know, but it might have something to do with the fact that, again, Nervous's father is the Grim Reaper. Apparently his hobbies include blinking and twitching a lot, so it's undoubtable that these experiments are having a severe impact on Nervous. And the Beaker family lore actually extends to The Sims 2 for the PSP as well. And so we find here that Nervous actually seemingly died from one of the Beaker's experiments, and on talking to one of the characters in the the game, it's actually revealed that Nervous gave himself over to the Beakers to be their test subject for money, which I don't want to say that that has some kind of like potential like, you know, reference to society, but also feel like that might also be the case too. All in all, very uncomfortable, very sad. What is it that the Beakers were trying to do with Nervous? How did any kind of governmental body or like how come no welfare checks were done on Nervous? It's all very sad, honestly. And so speaking of The Sims 2 for the PSP, this game actually introduced another really interesting and sick and twisted character who is Dominic Nulo. Or, I apologize, Dr. Dominic Nulo. From reading up on this character, it seems as though this is as meta as The Sims has ever gotten, really. Because Dominic is apparently aware of the plumb bob over his head. He is aware of the fact that the plumb bob causes him to do things outside of his control, even though sometimes he seemingly has autonomy and other times he doesn't. He then invented a helmet which lets him turn the tables and actually control other people via their plumb bob, and he actually strives to control the player's character. And the first thing that I really thought about Dominic is, why is he the only one that seems to be fully aware of the plumb bob, honestly? And I guess that it does just also bring up a lot of kind of like slightly existential questions around free will and everything in general. So I'm actually not going to get too in the weeds about that right here, and I'm going to move on. So nowadays, as we are very much so accustomed to, EA likes to trap new death types behind the paywalls of expansion packs, etc. So imagine my surprise when I learned that back in the Sims 2 era, EA actually just gave players another way to end their Sims by introducing an item which that is its sole function, is to end Sims' lives. And this was the running with scissors playset. If a Sim ran around while holding a pair of scissors for too long, there was a chance that they could kill another Sim. This death type was based around the fright death, which we were discussing earlier, where Sims who see another Sim running with scissors will be afraid of them, and if adults caught a child Sim holding the scissors, then they would get scolded. Once again, let's take a stab at the fact that Sims 4 could honestly never. How random and morbid is all of that, honestly. As we move on though, let's stick to the topic of questionable downloadable content for The Sims, because we are now moving on to one of the most infamous pieces of CC/mods, which is Girl Doll Dressed. And this one genuinely really quite unsettles me. So back in 2010, a broken piece of custom content called Girl Doll Dressed was uploaded to the Sims resource, which is a popular site for downloading CC. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. Basically, this doll was just a piece of CC that functioned like a regular teddy bear in the game. Now, unfortunately, how this corruption manifested was once a player had installed Girl Doll Dressed into their game, the file would essentially start attaching itself to the player's game and kind of just infecting it to the point where the game would run really terribly. Some also experienced having completely corrupted or, you know, unplayable save files entirely, which is so devastating. And what makes all of this much worse is the fact that the file would attach itself seemingly invisibly, so you might not know how, you know, widespread the kind of corruption had gone before it was too late. Did I even mention this was all happening in The Sims 3? Girl Doll Dress then almost evolved into a bit of a virus, because when a player would upload anything to The Sims 3 Exchange and their games had already been corrupted, it then passed on that corruption to other players who then downloaded the stuff from the Exchange. So all in all, it was really difficult to tell when somebody had downloaded it, where they downloaded it from, and again, what the extent of the corruption really was. The havoc that this doll caused pushed EA to actually release a statement, which is fairly unprecedented, honestly. And unfortunately, the conclusion to all of this is nowhere near as dramatic as one might have hoped, as it just turned out that the original creator of the doll stated that they had just uploaded a broken file by accident. And many players who were active in the forums and stuff at the time seemed to accept this reasoning. It is really interesting to see though how after so long. News outlets still are producing articles and stuff on this phenomenon, I guess, moment, event, whatever you want to call it, in The Sims 3's history. And honestly, when I first heard about it, it unsettled me so much because I still get a little bit nervous. I'm like, yeah, but what if Girl Doll Dressed is still in there? What if not that I use The Sims 3 Exchange all that much, but what if I do? What if she gets me? It honestly is just so unfortunate that the item, that the piece of CC that caused all of this trouble just so happened to look like such a cursed little doll, let's be real. And truthfully, what discussion of strange Sims lore and mysteries would be complete without a nod to OMG WTF BBQ? I don't want to actually say the bad word. There we go. This is a notorious Sims 2 mod, which, how do I say this in the most YouTube algorithm safe way? Let you place a baby atop a flaming grill to produce a delightful meal. I guess it gives baby food a whole new meaning. Basically, it was a crazy mod here, and I guess the mystery here is, how did Simmers truly get so depraved?
That's suspicious.
So out of love, respect, and pure reverence, I had to put The Sims 2 DS in a layer all of its own right at the bottom of this iceberg today, because she is just so mysterious and so strange in so many delectable ways. If you don't know what this game is, it came out during the Sims spin-off kind of console era, and the main thrust of the plot is that you are driving through the desert, you lose control of your car, and you crash in Strange Town. And the mechanic is basically like, yeah, I can't fix your car, sorry, you'll have to go stay at the hotel. You walk into the hotel, and then, you know, a couple of little side quests later, basically you are given the hotel. You don't know who the previous owner is, you're just suddenly the owner, and you know, a bunch more crazy stuff happens as a few little tasters into the plot of this game. Some mobsters roll in and extort you while they're trying to illegally set up a money printing press in your hotel. Your dream goth girlfriend moves in and she starts up a little cow cult that worships the deity Beelzebub in the basement as well. I'm pretty sure that you have to stop her by getting the help from an ancient mummy that lives out in the desert, maybe. I did consider making kind of like cow-themed cults its own whole thing on this iceberg, but truly I've been yapping for far too long today already, so I thought that I'd leave that little, sprinkle that in once again for you guys to go check out yourselves if you're interested. But anyway, aliens attack Strange Town in The Sims 2 DS fairly regularly, and I'm pretty sure that robots also roll up at some point and you have to become a rat-themed superhero to defeat them. I also think that Bigfoot lived in your basement somewhere as well. This hotel basement was a crazy place. This game truly was batshit, is the best way to describe it. I played so much of it as a kid and I'm tempted to boot up my DS and give it another try so often, honestly. But the whole mystery, well, one of the many mysteries surrounding this game is, why does nobody leave? It almost seems as though Strange Town is surrounded by this, like, almost not force field, but just this strange bubble that keeps everyone there. And I know that it's quite an isolated place being out in the desert, but still, it's just the question of why does nobody leave? I feel like this term is very overused, but it almost feels a little bit liminal spacey, I suppose. I don't know, it just had a vibe, and that was really fed into by the soundtrack of the game. Honestly, Strange Day and Strange Nights were such bops. I might play them in the background, we'll see. The music really did encourage quite a strange, eerie, like, just a vibe as well. I can't really describe it. I'm gonna stop talking about it now because it's something that I definitely want to make a full deep dive video on in the future because there is so much to talk about when it comes to this game. And with that though, guys, we have actually reached the bottom of The Sims Lore and Mysteries Iceberg. If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go grab another cup of tea because I've been talking for far too long this morning. Once again, my question of the day is, what Sims lore mystery tidbits do you wish that more players knew about? And again, if there are any topics that you wish that I'd covered, drop them down below and I will see if I can put together a part 2 eventually. Right, editing me from the future here, I'm just jumping in to give a massive thank you to this channel's members for making ginormous projects like this possible. So I'm gonna give a big thank you to our channel's Tiberian members. We've got Amy M, Roberta C, Bloodied Porcelain, Lady Cilantro, and Vanagander. And of course, another thank you to all of our Soul Piece members. I unfortunately think I've got to the point where I can't read everybody out as I used to because there are now just so many of you, which is absolutely crazy. So still, thank you all so much for your support. It means the world. With that said though, check out the video on the screen just here if you want to see more from me because YouTube thinks that you will love it. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you again soon.